So now we will be discussing about the structure of nose. So the nose is having an elongated structure which we normally see outside. So that is made up of a soft bone called as cartilage. So cartilage will be helping in, it will be forming the external part of the cavity, an external nose. So the same cartilage will be present in the ear also. So the ear, what we have discussed, the external ear, the ear pinna is made up of cartilage, and even the external nose, the nose is made up of cartilage. So if, as we see here in this picture, this is the external nasal portion which is divided into two halves. So the nose is separated into two halves, two chambers due to the presence of nasal septum. Nasal septum separates the external nose. External nose is separated into two halves or two portions due to the presence of nasal septum. So here the cavity that is present inside the nose is called as nasal cavity. So as these cavity will be having richly supplied with blood vessels, and it will also have more amount of receptors. Receptors, that is the cells that are present here, the receptors that are present here in the nose is olfactory receptors. So these olfactory receptors actually perform the function of analyzing the chemicals that are present in the gas, in the air. So these chemicals which we inhale are like volatile substances. So what are volatile substances? So volatile substances are substances which have a very low boiling point. They have very low boiling point, and in the atmosphere they get evaporated, when they form vapors, and with very little amount of heat they form into vapors. So those chemicals will be analyzed by the receptors that are present in the nasal cavity. So the nasal cavity will be having olfactory receptors. So here we can see this is a nasal cavity, nasal portion, and this is the external nasal cavity, and here towards the inner side is a nasal cavity, and these cavity will be having the specialized cells, that is olfactory receptors. And in here in this picture we can also see that the nasal cavity is separated by a bony structure called as palate with the oral cavity. So in humans the nasal cavity is separated with the oral cavity with the help of a structure, a bony plate called as palate. So this part we'll be discussing in the next sense organ, that is the tongue. So coming back to the nose, so the nose, if you see, it is having the nerve terminals. So this is the nasal portion, and the nerve terminals will be present very close to the body, to the skin. So only in the receptors, that is only the nerves that are present in the nose have a very direct contact with the cells or with the external environment. Normally if you see in the eye or in the ear, we have seen that the sensory cells are the receptors are the cells which convert the electrical, the photo impulses or chemical impulses to electrical impulses, and that will be distributed by carried by the nerve terminals. Whereas in the nose, these cells are the nerve terminals will be in direct contact with the atmosphere, which takes up the impulses. So these nerve terminals will be connecting to the part of the brain which is called as olfactory bulb. So, olfactory bulb is a part of the forebrain, that is the major part of the brain is the cerebrum. So, the cerebrum is again divided, I mean it is having 4 parts. In that, the first part of the brain is the olfactory bulb. So, olfactory bulb, which is present at the floor of the brain, will be helping in analyzing the information of smell, whereas the other sense organs will be coordinating with the one part of the brain, that is the hypothalamus. So, hypothalamus is a part where the eyes or where the ears will be sending the information to, but whereas only in the nasal cavity, that is the nose, is in contact with the olfactory bulb, which gives the stimuli to the, which sends the stimuli to the olfactory bulb for analyzing the information. So, nose here we see that it is having many, like it can sense nearly 1500 substances. Substances can be sensed. So, different smells can be sensed, but normally we can smell only few substances, we can analyze only few substances, but whereas normally it can have a capacity of 10,000 substances can be analyzed. And coming to the structure of tongue. So, tongue is a muscular structure that is present in the buccal cavity. So, mouth opens into buccal cavity, the space that is present in the the mouth opens into buccal cavity. So, this buccal cavity is having a muscular structure called as tongue. So, tongue not only helps in helping in the movement of food in the buccal cavity, but major portion is it is helping in sensing the food. So, if you see small children, the infants are very fond of keeping everything in their mouth. So, because they have a very high sensitivity, the tongue has very high sensitivity. So, they would like to sense through their tongue. So, the tongue will be having many receptors. So, receptors are present on the tongue, which helps in analyzing the taste of the substance or taste of the food. So, we find the food tasty, or sometimes we don't feel like eating that particular food, consume that particular food, might be because of this bad flavor or bad smell. So, that is because both the tongue and the nose are interconnected. So, if we see when we are when we caught up with cold, when we suffer with cold, we normally don't feel like eating anything. So, the reason is both tongue and nose are interconnected. So, the taste of the food when we eat, it is enhanced, the taste will be enhanced by the smell, which is sensed by the nose. That is why we say that the nose and tongue are interconnected to each other. So, coming here, the tongue will be having many finger-like projections called as papillae. So, papillae are outgrowths, finger-like outgrowths. So, papillae are finger-like outgrowths which have the receptor cells. So, the receptor cells will be present inside the papillae. So, there are 4 different types of papillae, that is valate papillae, foliate papillae, fungiform papillae and filiform papillae. So there are 4 different types of papillae present on the tongue, that is valate papillae, foliate papillae, fungiform papillae and filiform papillae are the different types of papillae. So here valate papillae will be behind the tongue, at the posterior part of the tongue. So these are bigger in size, these outgrowths are bigger in size. And next, coming to the foliate papillae will be towards the sides of the tongue. So towards the sides of the tongue will be the foliate papillae, and coming to fungiform papillae will be towards, all over the tongue. And next, coming to filiform papillae, which are flake like structures, very thin structures are present on the tongue, but they cannot analyze the taste of the food. So these 3 papillae will be having receptors which have the capacity or which have the ability to sense the taste, whereas filiform papillae, which are like flake like structures, will not have the sensory cells, that is they lack the receptor cells, so they fail in sensing the taste of the food. So if we see the papillae, so as discussed, papillae are the outgrowths. The outgrowths on the tongue are called as papillae. So these papillae, if you see here, it is bigger in size. So these papillae are valate papillae. And the filiform papillae, they are flake like structures. And fungiform papillae, so fungiform papillae are round structured, but these are smaller when compared to the valate papillae. Valate are much broader in size, whereas fungiform is comparatively little smaller, and filiform, they are flake like structures. And coming to foliate papillae, which are present at the sides of the tongue, gives a bump outward appearance. A bumping outward appearance is seen for the foliate papillae, and these papillae will be having, it will be having the receptors which are present, which actually sense the taste of the food. So here you can see the pictures of the different types of papillae, and here is a picture where we can see the shape of, the sensory part of the tongue. So here there are many cells, there are 2 different types of cells present, that is transitional cells and gustatory cells. So gustatory cells are cells which actually sense the taste, of it, sense the chemicals that are present in the food, whereas transitional cells are the supporting cells. So the taste bud, is a part where it will be analyzing the taste. So these taste bud, this is a taste bud. So these taste bud has an opening called as taste pore. So in the mouth, the salivary glands are present. So these salivary glands secrete saliva. So when we eat the food, when we consume the food, the saliva helps in chewing the food, and it also the palate, the upper floor of the mouth, the upper floor of the buccal cavity, which is hard like structure, which is separating the nasal cavity and the oral cavity, the buccal cavity. It is separated by a palate. This hardy bone structure will be pushing the food, or will be forcing the food into the taste buds. So when the food is pushed, which is partially digested, which is partially dissolved with the help of saliva, when it is pushed into this taste bud, it will be analyzed. The chemicals that are present in the taste bud, that is in the food, will be sensed or will be analyzed by the gustatory cells, which are nothing but the receptor cells. So these will be analyzing the information, and a nerve terminal will be coming from these cells. So these nerve terminals join together to form gustatory nerve. a gustatory nerve is formed and it will be sending the information to the brain. So, if we see how the food is being tasted, how we can feel the taste of the food. So, the food contains chemicals. So, the chemical substances that are present in the food will be dissolved, partially dissolved in saliva. So, when they are partially dissolved in saliva, the food will be, these chemicals will be pushed into the taste bud with the help of the palate, and this taste bud which contains the gustatory cells. Gustatory cells which are nothing but the receptors. So, these gustatory cells will be analyzing the chemicals that are present in the food and it stimulates a nerve impulse. Nerve impulses are stimulated, where these nerve impulses are carried by the gustatory nerve to the brain for analysis. So, this is how we are able to sense the taste. So, normally we see on the tongue we can we see that the tip of the tongue has more receptors for sweet and saltiness, and the sides of the tongue are more receptible for the sourness, and at the back of the tongue it is bitterness that we will be sensing. So, tip of the tongue salt and sweet, and sides of the tongue sour, and behind the tongue the bitter flavors can be sensed. So, along with that there is one more flavor called as Unani. So, Unani is a flavor which is normally seen in the Asian, which is normally used in Asian cooking, like if we this taste can be we get these tastes where the food is rich in proteins. So, the foods are containing high proteins, then we can have this some sort of tangy flavor, and along with that we can also see this flavor in the tasting salt like monosodium glutamate, MSG. So, which is widely used in Chinese cuisine. We get this taste. So, tongue, how can we sense the food is with the help of the receptors, that is the gustatory receptors that are present, and the nerve coming from the tongue is the gustatory nerve. And how can we protect the tongue? So, tongue need to be cleaned every day, twice a day, and it should, very hot or very cold substances. It is advised not to consume very hot or very cold substances, because the food can be tasted effectively. The cells will be able to sense the chemicals effectively only when it is at the body temperature, at normal temperature. So, food tastes much tastier when it is at normal temperature. We can exactly find what taste it is at normal temperature. So, it is advised to consume food at normal temperature, not very too cold nor too hot. And next, coming to the other sense organ, that is skin. So, we know that skin is very important sense organ. So, we say it is very important sense organ not only because it is analyzing the stimulus, it is sensing the stimulus, but it is a first line of defense. Skin is a first line of defense. So, it is where it is giving protection. So, first protection from the disease causing organisms or from the undesirable climates is by the skin. So, that is why it is considered as a first line of defense. And along with that, skin also play a very important role in excreting, and it also play a role in maintaining the body temperature. So, along with the protection, it is acting as an excretory organ also. So, what does skin excrete? We know that skin excretes sweat, a huge amount of water and salts and also fatty sterols are excreted in the form of sweat, and it is also maintaining body temperature. So, as we are warm blooded organisms where our body temperature need to be maintained constantly for proper metabolic activities, the skin plays a very important role in maintaining body temperature. So, if it is if outside, if it is very hot, so normally we sweat a lot, so that the body temperature will be cooled, and if outside, if it is very cold, freezing temperatures, then the body will be producing heat, where the heat the body temperature will be maintained, the heat will be preserved in the body to maintain the body temperature. So, skin plays a very important role in maintaining body temperature, which is very important, which is very critical for living organisms which are warm blooded. And coming to the structure of the skin. So, skin is mainly having two parts, it is mainly divided into two parts, that is the epidermal, that is epidermis and dermis. Epidermis and dermis.